steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to me.
There's something loose between my legs.
I don't know. Let go!
I'm heavier than a freaking boat.
Nothing he's could say could make that any better.
Yeah, nobody. No more radio for the rest of the race.
I'm going home.
Hello and welcome to DRS FC, an F1 podcast by soccer nerds. And because we are soccer nerds, we're going to start this preview laughing at Manchester United. If you don't know, they just lost a match. Wasn't it an FA Cup? Did they start those matches earlier? Was it League Cup? Okay, this is the Carabao Cup. They just lost and got booted out of the Carabao Cup by something called a Grimsby Town, who is my childhood club, naturally. Tremendous content.
Lifelong fan for about 13, was it 12 kicks?
Yeah, exactly. 2 goals, a very long sudden death penalty shootout in which both goalkeepers scored, but 2 missed penalties from Manchester United has them out of the Carabao Cup. Tremendous content. Okay, now that that's done, I can introduce everybody else. I am a soccer nerd. I'm André Carlisle, and I'm here with 2 others. Donald, how are you?
Do you realize our club has not lost to Manchester United at home since 1905? Unbelievable.
Tremendous. The mighty Grimsby Town.
The mighty Grimsby.
And Deepti, how are you?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, I was having a not great day, but after this, it's so much better now.
Listen, the key to sports is being a hater. And I'm sorry, when Manchester United loses to Grimsby Town, it brightens everybody's day if you are a hater. So, yes, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. We have one other thing we need to talk about before we get to the Zandvoort race, because I'm really excited that the season is back. I think it's in a really fun place. There's so much to talk about, but this one is F1 related. Cadillac named their 2 drivers. They're not names that we didn't expect, but it was great to see. Keanu Reeves showed up for an official announcement. If you haven't heard, it is Checo Perez, who used to have the dubious distinction of being memorialized in our Gloomy Boy Award. He is no longer. And also Valtteri Bottas. So a very experienced lineup. Deepti, your thoughts?
Oh, I'm so happy. And I think they did the rollout, even though everybody knew it was like the worst kept secret in F1. I think they still did the rollout really well. And like the videos that they posted, I thought Checo's like post about, I'm not just back, the whole of Mexico is back. All the Mexican fans are back with me. That was really cool. Of course, we saw Valtteri's like Murica post his not AI photo, which is sick. So I think it's cool because they're probably like 2 of the best number 2 drivers that we've ever seen. And so now both of them being on the same team. I think Valtteri was also asked about this. He was like, we're not going to go, like, there's not going to be a number 1, number 2. We're just going to drive as a team and see where we go. So I'm excited for it. This is going to make me root for an American team way more than Haas does, so I'm excited for that part too.
Yeah, no doubt. Haas is like fake American, which ain't bad these days. But I'm excited about Cadillac and what they have to offer. This feels like a really serious lineup. I'm glad they went this direction with it. Like I always knew, like their driver selection was going to tell us how serious they are about this, and this was the most serious decision they could have made. Donald, what do you think?
I love it. I don't think it's been a secret on this show that I've said that Audi is a team that I'm really interested in following, but really it's Cadillac. Cadillac is a GM brand. I grew up in a GM family. I worked for GM twice. My dad worked for 40 years. This is big time. And Cadillac has always been, and GM has always been synonymous with racing in this country. And so the fact that they are now entering this grid with these 2 drivers has me super excited. As Deepti mentioned, I like the fact that they had the team videos that introduced the team. They went on Good Morning America, did all the stuff. The Keanu video is great, but they also had their individual stuff so that you could obviously get reintroduced to their personalities. Checo and saying, inviting all of Mexico to join back in, and again, it's one point the biggest car company in Mexico was General Motors. A lot of General Motors cars are made in Mexico. So that is, again, a brand that they don't have to learn about, or it's not a, they don't have to look up who it is on the internet. They know what it is. The brand is synonymous with driving and success and racing, and they are all in. And then you also have Bottas in his way. I love the behind the scenes video of the America photo, because when you first saw it, I admit, I was like, yo, that's cool that they mocked that up for him. That's cool. And I was like, he would probably do something like that, but it's, I mean, it's cool. Like, it got him doing stuff. And then they're like, but wait, we actually did this. And the video is perfect. The fact that he's able to do that. So you get those two guys back on the grid. And I think for Cadillac, it is a 100% A+ rollout. Like, how do you not spoil something that was already spoiled, right? We already knew these two guys were going to be the drivers, but to still roll it out this way and have where everyone was left kind of gasping at how well it was done, that's a real cool thing to do.
Yeah, I also love the story that, they asked Checo, they were serious. They gave him the hard question, like, hey, the last time you were in this sport, it wasn't all that great, kind of like, what do you have to say? And then my man was like, you seen them other number 2 drivers? Okay, that's all I got to say. And I was like, you know what?
How's
that is all you got to say.
Still looking, vulnerable.
Exactly. He's like, what? They picked up 5 points total now? Okay, just so y'all know. I was like, fair enough, Checo. I got you.
Also, the fact that Cadillac shut down rumors promptly about calling Christian Horner, which, like, obviously, if they're going to get Checo, they're not going to bring that guy back. But it was just funny how they put out, I don't know if it was a statement, but somebody, like, in an article, their sources shut that down immediately.
It was one of the main people at Cadillac F1 officially said, we have not been talking to him, and we didn't talk to him. I figured that was the case. That is not Cadillac style. They do not want to bring controversy into their garage. And they also have had a principal since December. So, like, why? Just because Christian Horner was available, they know why he was available. It wasn't that Red Bull fired him because of results. They fired him for something else. So they knew what they were doing. And I also think, with Checo, it's the question was funny because he's like, look, don't act like I didn't place second in a championship once. Bottas has done it twice, finished second, and behind, again, 2 of the great drivers of their era, one of the greatest drivers ever. So these guys know how to drive, and they know how to be teammates. They've obviously been great teammates to the people who have won ahead of them. So this is going to be an interesting dynamic, those two. And I think also, they both like each other. They both are real cool with each other. They have always been cool with each other when they were on different teams. So the fact that they're on the same team, I think that helps a brand new, F1 team immensely into the grid without any controversies and just, 2 solid drivers.
Yeah, those are 2 really popular personalities as well, and just people. Bottas more with the extroverted personality, and in the kind of the way that he says things is just very, very funny. He's just a funny person to listen to. But yeah, the Horner thing always felt a little bit silly. Like, if you're putting a team together, you would have had to have him in like months ago because of the control that he wants. You already have people who are doing those things. You bring him in, you're gonna have to relinquish a lot of that control, and that's gonna immediately cause a dumpster fire before you even get to the track, and that's not something they need. So, okay, anyway, thank you. We had to get to that. We are an American-based podcast, so we needed to talk about it. Sorry, Deepti, you are American-based.
I am.
Even though you're in England right now, I just want to make sure people know, just in case. All right, let's get to it. Circuit Zandvoort, the Dutch Grand Prix. This is the race that is coming back. We are welcoming the return of the season in Zandvoort, which is, Dutch is pretty easy language, right? Zandvoort, Sandfort. It's on a beach. That's what it is. It's a 4.259 kilometer track, 2.6 miles long for the conversion to the Americans. They will do 72 laps around this track. The race lap record is 1 minute 11.097 seconds. That was set by Lewis Hamilton in 2021. We're going to get into the history of the track a little bit, and then what happened in 2024, and then we'll discuss kind of what the track is like before getting into things to watch and maybe even some weather chat, which I know is such a tease. Donald, can you give us the history?
Yeah, so this track has been around since 1948. That's when it was built. It was built using communications roads that the occupying German army had built and obviously left at that point once World War II was done. And the first race on the track was in 1950, but the first Grand Prix as part of Formula One was in 1952. They raced this race off and on. They had maybe a year or two off every now and then until 1985, and then they left Zandvoort for about 35 years. There's this guy on the grid. I think we know his name. His name is Max Verstappen. He's Dutch. So the Dutch Grand Prix was like, hey, we back. So they came back in 2021. I will always say if the Dutch Grand Prix had come back in 2022, Lewis Hamilton would have the title because they wouldn't have had that Max little bump at the end of 2021. But they returned in 2021. It's not contracted after this year, and there's not sure what's going to happen to it. But it's still in the mix for later years. I will say this. This is also the first Grand Prix to have its own music. Yes, this track has its own music. The song is called Lights Out. It's by Job Smeltzer, better known as La Fuente. It is usually played after the national anthem at the race. I think the first time they introduced it was in 2023. So if you hear two songs, hear the Belgian national anthem and then some other track that seems weird, it's because Zandvoort has its own song, and it will play it as long as it's allowed to.
That is hilarious to force drivers to stand there in reverence of the track as its anthem is played.
It's cocky. I like it.
It really is. And for a track that, like you said, F1, it's kind of like, whatever. Maybe we race here, maybe we don't.
Look, if it's not going to be contracted this year, we may hear it multiple times. They might be just playing it during, like, right. Oh, is there a yellow flag? Run the track. Play the track.
All right. I have so many things to say about that, but we're going to move on. Deepti, can you tell us what happened last year at the Dutch Grand Prix?
Absolutely. So last year, Lando Norris actually got pole position for the race with Max right behind him. And as we had seen multiple times, Max bested Norris at the first corner and took over P1, but Lando fought back. Some of that X-Dog was back, and he did fight back and got in front of Max again and ended up winning. He won the race by over 20 seconds. I think it was around 22, which is wild. And then to round out the podium, it was Charles in P3. Oscar got P4, Carlos P5, and then yada, yada, yada. There were no DNFs. That's exciting. I'm going to get to this later, but we've had so many races where we haven't had all the drivers finish. So hopefully we'll get that again. The Saubers were very slow. They were lapped twice. So we're going to look for some improvement on their end over here. But yeah, other than that, it was one of those kind of, I guess, momentous wins for Lando, just because it was one of the more dominant ones over Max when he was fighting for that championship that he was so close to almost getting.
Yeah, I'll say in terms of Sauber being better, I don't know how much better, but you can't get much worse than lap twice on an F1 track. That is brutal. All right, let's talk about our tracks, the track itself, the characteristics, and then what we like about it and what we don't. There are two DRS zones. Very interesting because they both kind of curve. One way more than the other. There's a very long corner that leads into the start-finish straight. You basically get DRS at the start of that corner, maybe like a little bit into that corner after that first initial turn, and you've got DRS all the way around. You rarely see DRS on an actual corner, which is interesting. So I kind of like it, but it's that banked corner. It's really like you're going to see some great camera angles because this track, the word you're going to hear a lot, which is a word that is in the category of like moist to me. Like the word moist is undulating. I don't like that word for some reason. It's unfortunate. It sounds bad. It sounds like I shouldn't be able to say it. Like
André, I'm going to push back on undulating being on the same level as moist.
Listen, I'm just saying both of them sound like they need to be censored. I'm sorry. Like I'm going to have to put the explicit on this podcast just because I said both, and it feels dirty. It feels wrong.
That's going to be in the title of our podcast now.
But that's what this track really is. It's like a little roller coaster by the sea. It goes in and out of sand dunes. There's so many banks. There's so many tight, twisty turns as well. There is a very long straight, but the rest of it, you're just kind of hanging on and trying to nail the apexes on all these corners. So I kind of like this one. You know, I always try to tell people to watch the onboards, and I might drop an onboard link in there. But if you get motion sickness, maybe you don't want to watch it, because there will be a section in there where you're just kind of like the camera's just twisting and turning as the driver goes around the track. But Donald, I want to start with you. Your thoughts about this track and whether you like it or not.
I think it's fine. It's not one of my favorite tracks. It's not one of my worst tracks. I love the fact that there is a DRS zone that includes this curve. And like you said, it's an opportunity for these drivers to kind of bank up some speed entering that final straight. It's not like other tracks where there usually is some sort of sharp curve that doesn't allow you to really do that. So I like that part of it. But I'm the various turns, it, like you said, it kind of makes you feel like you're just, driving in circles because you kind of are. But I'm cool with this track. It's not, it's right in the middle. I don't think it's anything. I think the one thing that I obviously have toned it down a bit is because Max has dominated on this track. Obviously, it makes sense. It's his home track. Until last year, this felt like just a checked off win for him every single time. And maybe last year is with Lando winning by so many, by such a big gap. Maybe that's where everyone can go, hey, this is up for grabs again. But it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think I like this track in terms of the onboards, in terms of the technical parts of the track and the banking, that it's pretty rare to see the extreme levels of banking that are in this track. It's really interesting to see the cars do that. But because of all of that, and because it is kind of tight, and because this is a track that was built so long ago, like you mentioned with the history, it doesn't really suit these cars. It's really hard to pass on this track. It's not quite Monaco, and you do have a long straight, so you can get some passing done, but that's pretty much where you're going to see the majority of overtakes on this track and during this race. So that's kind of where I think it's a little bit of a negative, because you're not going to see too much of cars passing one another on track, except for those long straight DRS passes that are going away next year, which we'll talk about when we drop our 2026 Regs pod, which is on the way. Deepti, your thoughts about this track?
Yeah, kind of similar sentiment to you guys. It's not like my favorite, but it's not my least favorite. It's one of those medium speed tracks, like you said. I think what I just don't like about it is there's not much overtaking ability. Basically, that straight down into turn one. Turn one could be like a fun area, like for do or die overtakes. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's more the scenery and the atmosphere that's kind of cool about it, and like how it was built through these sand dunes and on the beach. That is the more appealing factor. But like in a sense, I do also understand then why they are not necessarily like extending it for future seasons.
Yeah, and one thing I didn't mention with the beach, and of course we'll talk about weather at some point soon in just a second, but it's usually quite windy. Which is something to maybe note as well, because McLarens do seem to struggle a little bit in certain types of winds. So if you get crosswinds, maybe they have a little bit of an issue, and maybe that opens things up or makes things a little bit closer. But then again, like you said, Lando won this race by 22 seconds last year, so maybe not. Deepti, tire talk, tire with a I?
I was trying to be, American Cadillac. We're getting in the zone. I will get to tire talk, but really quick, I wanted, if you don't mind, I'm going to go through a couple of the corners of this track that are really fun. The one that I just alluded to, the first corner, it's actually named the Tarzan corner, and why is a bit of a controversy / people have been speculating different stories. One is because the guy who originally owned the land that they kind of forced / bribed to give up was named Tarzan. So they're like, okay, we'll name it after you, and that they got that land for that turn. I like to think that it's because of the Disney character Tarzan, because you're swinging around the hairpin turn. And so it's a good name for that one, I guess. But that's a fun turn. And then we talked about the banking, and this track is often compared to the Indy 500 track because of how banked it is. And so there's a couple turns that are quite banked and high degrees, and one is turn 3, and then one is towards the end, turn I think 13 or 14. They're not quite the highest or the most scary banked curves around the circuit. Monza has one that's a little bit more, but like Andre said, if you check out like an onboard or just see different camera angles, you can see how much it is. Like even Max once, when they had just redone the track, he was surprised at how banked it was. So that part would be really cool. The other one that I wanted to talk about was turn 7, I believe, the Shivlak. That one is a point I think that we can check to, or we should see, because that's where a lot of drivers could spin out. That's one, this track doesn't have a lot of grip on it, and partially due to like the sand that blows from the wind. So low grip, medium to, I mean, they say low medium speeds. This is a medium speed corner, I guess, but it is one of those where they can spin out if they make a mistake. So that's one to keep an eye on. But those are the few corners. And then there's that cool like 11, 12 corner that's a sharp like right and then almost hairpin. So it's very windy, undulating, if you will.
I won't at all. I didn't even want to the first time. Thank you for that. Yeah, I do think it's important to highlight some of the other corners on there, and the Tarzan corner has a funny story. I read that too, and I was looking it up, and it's funny that some people just, it's almost, it feels like one of those things where like the story's too good, like story over facts, kind of like the rule of the internet, jokes over facts is kind of what it is. Yeah. But you know, whatever, I'm going with it. I mean, if you name a corner Tarzan, you got to have a good story for that. So
exactly.
All right, tire talk.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is a fun race for Pirelli because it's their 500th Grand Prix. So yay, go Pirelli. They are going with one step softer than last year's race. They're doing the C2 for the hard compound, C3 the medium, and C4 for the soft. And they said their aim is to push teams to a 2-stop strategy instead of what is usually done as the 1-stop, even though there are 72 laps and it is several laps. A lot of teams were able to do 1-stop just because, you know, low grip, the tires don't wear out as much. But I guess we talked about this, I think, before, how Pirelli likes to switch things up to change strategies, but I don't really necessarily like when they're trying to push like just another stop into the strategy. Like, it's, I guess at this point that's what they can do, but so we'll see. I know they've tried this before and teams have still done the 1-stop. So I'm not like super hopeful that a lot of teams will do 2-stop, but anyway. And then one more thing about like not tires, but just a fact about this race. The pit lane speed the speed limit has been increased from 40 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour, or in kilometers, that's about 60 to 80. So they're trying to, I guess, see if drivers can gain like a little bit of time in that too.
Yeah. I'm with you when it comes to pushing this strategy. And we talked a little bit about that in the regs as well, and why they might be trying to change the dynamic of the actual cars instead of changing some of these things for individual races. I think that's a more a pure way to go about it than like the artificial stops like at Monaco or something. They're not doing that here, but just saying like it is interesting. And I do hope that maybe the 1-stop does become an option as well as the 2-stop, because then it's interesting. You know, Lando stayed on that 1-stop before the break and ended up winning that race, and Oscar was on the 2-stop. So like there's some of those like little strategy decisions and interesting things that can make things interesting once multiple strategies are in play, instead of, I mean, if everybody's doing a 1-stop and then you force everybody to do a 2-stop, you're not actually changing anything because everybody still has to do the same strategy. So like opening it up so people can do different strategies is really the key. Anyway,
right.
Random rant. Before we get into what to watch, let's talk about weather, because we mentioned it's by a beach, we mentioned there's wind, and we mentioned there's sand. There's also rain in the forecast for every single day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Not a lot of rain, and it'll be when the rain is timed that'll be interesting. So it feels like it's going to be like wet to dry conditions, or maybe dry to wet conditions some days. We'll see. Friday, 69 degrees is the high, AM showers. Saturday, another nice temperature, 69 degrees, breezy and showers. Sunday, There it is again. Nice temperature, 69
Triple
a.m.
nice.
showers. Yeah, very very nice, very nice forecast for Zandvoort. Donald, your thoughts?
Well, I was gonna say you mentioned undulating and moist as words that you just don't like. Add wets to that because these maybe this one stop, two stop strategy ain't gonna be a problem if there's gonna be a lot of rain or if the track is going to be wet. Because if it is, then you have, especially like you mentioned, Deepti, there's a couple turns there where people are known to skid out, even in dry weather. So if it's a little bit damp in those turns, that could change strategy drastically. So I like that Pirelli's trying to play around with the tires, but in the end, the weather may be the determining factor here when it comes to strategy.
Yeah, definitely. And that's going to be interesting, especially for Ferrari, who are pretty unfortunate when it comes to rain. But if it's like dry to wet or something, or wet to dry, and it dries and they make a smart or well-timed decision like Lewis has in the past when it comes to taking off those intermediate tires if they're needed and switching to slicks, maybe that can work. Before we get to a break, we have Deepti on a preview episode, which means she's going to scare us as she tells us what the track shape reminds her of. And I'm looking at it right now.
I added it because I wanted to ask you, because I'm not sure I can say what I initially thought as soon as I looked at this.
Well, you're going to have to say it now. I mean, we've already said moist and undulating. We're going to have to just get into it, whatever it is.
Like, a certain adult toy, maybe.
Deepti, go to your room. Go. All right. Go to your room.
All right. So
I asked you guys to go. Okay, if you turn it from the angle that we have, turn it so that the long straight is on the bottom. Then you could say it's like, one of those wonky witch hats, maybe.
Maybe. I thought maybe like a joystick, right? Like if you turn it that way, maybe it's more like like something like that instead of a witch hat. But also, joystick has other implications that.
It looks like a hook that you would use if you have a lot of grocery bags. You don't want to mess up your hands. You get the little hook that has a little handle on it, and you just kind of grab your bags and go. That's what this looks like. Doesn't look like anything else, Deepti.
No, you're right. You're so right. I didn't know those existed, but you're right.
Thank you, Donald, for the G-rated version of what this track looks like. On that note, we're going to take a break, and then we will be back to actually talk about the race and maybe not sex toys. All right, we are back. And now, damn it, Deepti, I can't unsee it. See what you did? This is a problem.
But you know what? It stopped you thinking about the word undulating.
Really, to be honest with you.
He's now like, I welcome undulation.
Yeah,
so.
now everything comes into play and I need to refocus. Okay, here we go. We're going to get into our things to watch. And we were going to have Meg on this episode, but apparently the Verstappens know she's a hater and cut off her internet. So she's not on this episode. Kyle just got back from Europe, but they both had a thing to watch in the doc. So we're going to talk about that first because they're both Max related. Kyle says, can Max extract enough out of the car in his home race? And Megan, clearly thinking that the answer is no, says, how angry can the Dutch get when Max isn't good? So she's looking for angry Dutch people. Donald, your thoughts on Kyle and Megan's question, basically just thoughts about Max in this current iteration of car, which is not a driver's championship winning car. It can be a race winning car depending on very slim, it's got a very narrow margin, but probably more than likely he'll be doing good just to get on the podium or maybe even top 5.
Yeah, this is a really interesting race for not just Max, but Red Bull in general, right? All the changes they've done. This is a very different Red Bull team that has showed up at Zandvoort in previous years. And I am curious as to not necessarily how Dutch fans are going to be frustrated. Dutch fans are going to be dancing and partying no matter what. Like Max could drive 12 miles an hour the entire time and they would have a ball. I think Max will be pissed off if this track, I mean, especially this, he wants to win this. This is not it'd be nice, it'd be really cool. This is a must win for him. And he always views it that way. I know he views most races that way, but this is the one where if he would trade, I think he would trade every other race for this one because this is the one at home. And a lot of guys do that when they're on their home track. So I think the frustration may be visible for him at a lot of points this weekend. I would say the telltale sign is going to be FP1. I know it's an early one for us in America, but FP1, if you see, that Red Bull is just not up to snuff, you'll see him kind of wig out a little bit because he's going to start knowing that this is going to, compound upon itself and turn into a bad race. And he obviously wants to be on top of that podium. He doesn't just want to hear his name called. He wants to, have the national anthem be played twice, once at the beginning of the race and once for him at the end. So this is a really big race for him. I'm not sure if Red Bull is up to the challenge. That's the question.
Yeah, I think that part is the question because we saw it the last race before. FP1, you're right, started out bad, but we're used to seeing them struggle. Like Max hates the car in FP1 and FP2 and FP3. Then suddenly in qualifying, he does Q1 and Q2. And suddenly he's like, this car, the brakes or whatever, he's complaining about it. And then suddenly Q3, everything comes together and he puts in a lap and he's on pole. That didn't happen in that last race. It was bad. The car stayed bad. They never made a comeback. And I think he finished, 8th or something in the race. It was down there. It wasn't even close to a podium position. And that's the interesting part for me is that they're not able to, or they've lost the ability, perhaps, we'll see in this race, to turn around that car performance over the course of a race weekend.
And the one thing, though, that's going to be different about this race than those other ones is, you hear him. Yeah, we joked that it's 2 laps into FP1 and he's already my car's broke, it's done, we're going to have a terrible race. And then they get it together. But that is always him kind of barking at his team in a way, trying to get them to understand what needs to be fixed. The difference here is and you kind of heard it last year, there's a point where he's going to actually panic. This is the only race where you're going to see him actually panic if something really goes wrong because he wants to win so bad. And he knows that any real problems with the car is going to cost him, especially with how McLaren's going. So that's going to be the difference here is if an FP1, you hear him kind of get on the horn, you're going to hear, if he's not liking the car, you're going to hear panic in his voice. And that is going to be the tell sign that, Red Bull's out. Who's going to challenge McLaren?
Yeah, fair. Deepti, your thoughts on Max, kind of where the car situates and him being at his home race in a car that probably won't be good enough to be on the top step of the podium?
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. The difference this season is that even if Max doesn't start off well, he isn't able to come back and finish the race strong, except for a couple offhand occasions. So I don't see them having enough to unless he pulls out a miraculous performance and just somehow gets the car to do everything that he wants. I feel like maybe if it does rain, that will obviously help him a bit because he's really good in the wet, and he's willing to take more risks in the wet than some of the other drivers. So that might be a saving grace for him, but I don't foresee him doing as well as he hopes, which is winning.
Yeah, I think you're to call out the weather and how it could impact him is definitely right. But I think what he will need and probably want is a full wet race, on intermediates the entire time. If there's any dry aspect to it, so we've seen this. Well, what race was it where they set the car up to be for wet conditions, and then suddenly it turned dry, and they were the car is just undrivable now. I think we could run into that situation depending on what the weather does.
Yeah, I wonder how many teams who did that and then basically lost their whole race before it even started, if they're going to try to do that again. But I think it's not as likely to rain as it was that time. So I feel like just based on precedent, they would go with the dry weather setup and then see. But it'll be interesting, yeah.
Just so people know, in case the weather and everything does change from what you may hear us say, I'm recording this on Wednesday, or we're recording this Wednesday, August 27th, around 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. This was the forecast from AccuWeather at that time, so that's what we dropped in there. If it changes, it changed on us, and that's what weather does sometimes. But as of now, that's what we're reacting to. Deepti, I want to stick with you because you have an interesting thing to watch as well. You ask, can all 20 drivers finish the race?
Yeah, like I alluded to in the recap from last year, we didn't have any DNFs, which is exciting. But this season, this will be race 15. So we've had 14 races, and of the 14, only 2 of them have had all 20 drivers finish, which is not great for, I don't know, maybe some people like DNFs and like the drama of it, but I just feel like for the look of the sport, it's not great. And so hopefully this is one again where they will have all of them finish. Maybe it's due to the fact that there are more rookies this year than anything, that there are more DNFs, but either way, I'd love if we get 20 drivers across the line.
Yeah, fair. And that's actually a wild stat because I kind of think of this as being like the most refined era of F1 where you don't have like engines failing on a routine basis or blowing up or anything. Larry, you remember that classic shot on board of a car's tires just blowing off both front tires? Like, we don't really see those things, punctures. We don't really see those things that force somebody out of a race, but still we've had other issues that have created a lot of other DNFs, which is kind of an interesting thing given the reliability doesn't seem to be a huge problem anymore. Donald, your thoughts? Do you think all 20 will finish this race?
No, because I don't think it's, like Deepti said, the numbers are against them. And I think what the interesting part of it is it's not just the rookies, right? Like, I know Kimi had a stretch where I was like 3 out of 4 races he had to retire, but like Alex Albon retired 3 races in a row. Carlos Sainz had one where he didn't even start the race because his car failed them in the grid or in the formation. You've had guys from the most experienced to the rookies. It feels like DNFs have challenged the entire grid this year, and so I expect that to happen again. It's just you kind of have to until the trend kind of changes. But I would be shocked if everyone finishes this race.
Yeah, that is fair. I think the rain and, as we mentioned, the wind and the sand and all the turns, the twistiness, the undulation of the track. It might be a little tough, but you know what? I'll be the odd one. And I think all 20 drivers can finish. They finished last time. Even if you got to go slow and get lapped twice, I feel like they will finish. Somebody will, they'll all finish the race. That's what I'm hoping for. Coming out of a break, it really would suck for somebody to just DNF, especially if it's early in the race or they don't even make it to the starting grid. That would be unfortunate, but we'll see. Donald, you got an interesting one. What do you want to watch?
Yeah, so for me, is everybody rested now? We had a nice long break. Everybody good? We are. Okay, good. So now who's gonna push forward, right? Who's gonna be the team or driver that makes the charge and really utilizes this break period? I think we're all hoping on a personal level that it's Lewis, because he's talked about how he needed this break to kind of recharge and kind of reassess everything, and hopefully that has been great for his soul and great for his psyche, and then also for Ferrari, for them to kind of work out some of these issues that they've been having. I think when it comes to Alpine, right, like they've had a tumultuous summer with not just on the track but off, and has that compounded upon itself? Have they used that time wisely? And even some of these teams that are kind of going for 6th place, 7th place, what have they done to really push the envelope and make a charge? And hopefully we see some great racing. I hope I don't think anyone hopes that it's one team getting lapped twice. I don't think anyone wishes for that. But I also want to see if some of these teams in the middle part of the grid, or even in the battle for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, if there is going to be a team that really pushes forward and uses these last this race to kind of springboard them into the final 9 after that and really make a charge. This is where Ferrari made their push to try and get to the constructors last year. This is where McLaren made their push to overtake Red Bull. This is kind of the start of it, and as you can kind of treat it as 2 seasons. This is the clausura now for a soccer nerd. So let's see who really gets after it, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping that there is a driver out there that maybe we're not talking about that's going to be that one that makes a push where we kind of go, oh, see, when we look back at the end of the year, we think about they use this break to their advantage.
Yeah, and about the break, I think it's important to note that the FIA mandates that this is a break and no teams are allowed to work on the cars over the summer break. That's not to say that, I think this year we're not seeing any upgrades brought to Zandvoort, but that's not to say that they can't bring upgrades post summer break. It's just they have to be stuff that was tested before the break commenced. But anyway, this time I don't think we're seeing any. So it really truly will be a reset, and it'll be the same cars that we saw in Spa.
Yeah, I got to be honest. The American in me, the real the division of work-life balance, and it's a long season. This is a really grueling sport, traveling around the world. I know it sounds glamorous, and it is glamorous, but you got people who work in the garage. You got engineers crunching numbers and working 12, 14, 16-hour days and stuff like that, trying to just make the car as good as they possibly can. There's a lot, each team, just about every team now, I think there are some teams that are smaller than this, but has 1,000 workers assigned to them and trying to get things right. So I like the fact that they have this break and that you can't touch it. You're supposed to just completely shut down and they won't let you do anything to work on the car. I love that, but also my American brain is yo, this could be an opportunity.
Don't they have to shut down everything for 14 days? Even the garage and the facilities all have to close for 14 days. So it's a mandated vacation.
Yeah.
Sign me up for that, right? Give me one of those. They get this time to be with their families, and a lot of them go on vacation. And it feels like a lot of them have done anything other than something car related, right? And I think that's good for them. But again, once that facility opens back up, who comes back in? Hey, I came back from vacation. I'm fresh. I'm ready to go. Let's get to work.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. It is going to be interesting to see kind of how teams get back into the groove of things, because even though it is a mandated break, and I am all for it, and I think we should adopt that in every workforce as a national thing. Here, we never will, because our country is hell. But I do think that it's cool, it's great, but it does mean that everybody's coming back, and it's oh yeah, there's a driver's battle happening right now. A lot of teams were in a good spot, and now you got to get back into that same groove in terms of communication, in terms of being able to get your developments right, and engineering the car correctly and setting it up and all. You just got to get all the way back into that groove, and it's been a minute. And I know when I come back from vacation, I am useless. I just tell people I'm going through my email. They'd be you've been back for 3 days. I'm don't worry about that. I'm trying to get through my email.
I have 4 weeks of email, so
exactly. I'm y'all wouldn't stop emailing me, so I got to go through these, make sure I don't miss nothing. But basically, I'm just being defensive because I don't know nothing. Work is completely foreign to me when I get back. So I don't know how these teams are going to do when they actually get back in a race. Okay, now go time. Let's start again. Yeah. That's going to be interesting.
Where's the on button?
Yeah, and do they lose momentum? If we liken this to something in soccer, is it similar to a weather delay? Is it similar to something, where one team has the momentum and can they keep it afterwards? Is it similar to I don't know, even halftime is not as big of a delay, but still just losing momentum while they're on top. So that's a really interesting one too, to see if there'll be any shifts immediately, or if the teams that were on top can remain there.
Yeah. And I have my thing to watch. I didn't write it in the doc, and my bad, y'all, but I feel y'all will both have plenty to say when I bring up the teams that I'm going to talk about. There is not a constructors battle in terms of who's going to win the constructors championship. That's going to be McLaren, period. We're getting to a point where it's going to be mathematically certain really fairly soon if results continue the way that they have. But what is very interesting is 2, 3, and 4. I'll throw Red Bull in there just cause, but with that second seat still struggling to pick up points, they might not be in this as much as Mercedes, who are number 3 right now, 236 points, and Ferrari 260. That's not a big gap, especially when you think about two drivers that can pick up points and two drivers who could theoretically be pretty close to the podium positions, or at least one on the podium. We haven't seen two just yet on the podium, except in Canada. We did see Kimi and George on the podium together. But that's going to be my thing. Ferrari and Mercedes. These are very flawed teams. Mercedes, we thought they figured something out in Canada, and then they put like new suspension on the car and ruined it, and they hated it, and they went back to their old suspension. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Ferrari had been touting the fact that they're going to bring a new rear suspension all season. They brought it, and it didn't seem to change much. They were still having to have the ride height not as low as they wanted it. They were still have to do a lot of lift and coast. The car was really frustrating to drive, and Lewis said he was useless. First of all, I need Lewis to get some perspective, my guy. You're a 7-time world champion. You ever call yourself useless again, I might just come back and I don't like hearing that. It hurts, but I'm also
we need
like,
to have a conversation.
Yeah,
we let him
also
have the
like
break,
my guy.
But if he does that again, we're gonna have a house meeting.
Yeah, I'm like, you need to look in the mirror. Who do you see? Who is that? You tell me who that is. How many drivers championships?
It's like Cool Runnings. I see pride. I see power. I see a badass mother who won't take no crap off of nobody.
Right. I feel like that's what he needs, because I'm like, don't be calling yourself useless in front of cameras and microphones. What's wrong with you? So yeah, I want to see him definitely not have any more of those moments. But yeah, this is going to be interesting. This battle between Ferrari and Mercedes, because yeah, it's just a position and it's money, certainly. Neither one of these teams is starving for money, clearly. But still, it does mean something. And I think you really want to put on good performances, especially heading into 2026. Looks like Mercedes is going to have the same driver lineup in 2026 because Verstappen is staying at Red Bull. So you want to build the momentum for Kimi. You don't want him struggling like he was before the break. And for Ferrari, you need to get Charles and Lewis both getting close, getting good results, getting close to the podium every single time, if not on it. And I think that's something that they really need to do with their car. So I'm looking at both of those teams to figure out who's going to actually get it together for the rest of the season. Deepti, your thoughts?
I feel like I think I have more confidence in Mercedes moving forward a little bit, moving forward. Also because of the whole like George tanking thing, and now he's not tanking anymore. Plus, I hope like Kimi makes a slight comeback. He started off well, dipped a bit, and now he's back. So, I hope he's back up to where he started. So, I would say Mercedes maybe for me has a better shot, and I think they're third in constructors right now, but I think after this weekend they'll bridge that a little bit. Like I said, for both these teams, I feel like money is not like the biggest issue, but all that other stuff, like it's still like pride and, for going into the season with new regulations, money and time to focus on like designing that car will also help like any little bit. So I feel like either way, neither team will be like the biggest loser because one will get more money, one will get more like wind tunnel and CFD time. So they'll still be pretty close. But I think it will come down to the wire. But I feel like Mercedes has the edge.
Yeah, I do feel like even though we have a new regulation set coming in 2026 and a lot of this carryover from these cars, you're not going to be able to carry it over to the new cars because so much is changing. I still feel like I think it would be a mistake for both teams to tell their drivers like, hey, don't worry about it. Whatever happens this year, 2026 is our year, because you really have no idea who's going to nail it. Like, quite honestly, that's the fun thing about this regulation change is that you really don't know. Like, you could mess around and see Ferrari at the back of the grid, Mercedes at the back of the grid. Now, maybe through development as the year goes on, they get it together. But coming out of the gate, you really don't know. So you can't really predict that you're going to be great, even though the rumors are that Mercedes nailed the engine. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Who knows? And then what about the aerodynamic changes? Did they nail those as well? They're still struggling with this regulation set in terms of aero changes. So like there's a lot to figure out. And I don't think they should just be like, don't worry, like this year can't be a write-off. I want to see them both still continue to put maximum effort into this because this is like the present. This is what you can control right now. Next season, who knows what it's going to look like. Donald, what do you think?
I still think it's Ferrari. And I think because of the fact that, over the course of the last, 4 or 5 races, we've seen Antonelli take a dip a bit. And yeah, sure, it's a freshman slump, but you have this question mark of whether he can return from that. And it's not like he was leaps and bounds up there with George and the others every single race. He had some where he was up there. He had some where he was a little bit further down. He was kind of going back and forth, which is expected of him. But I think now that there is a sort of race here, he has to be the X factor for Mercedes. I just don't know if he is going to be able to generate the amount of points necessary for them to not just keep pace, but really overtake Ferrari. And again, if for some reason Max goes on a tear, that throws a wrench into the engine right there. And if Lewis, right, we're talking about Lewis like he is, is 15th every single week. He's still in the top 6, 7 every single time, it feels like, with the exception of a couple. And so if he's ticking up closer to the podium, those are points that Kimi and George just can't make up. And it's just like last year where Ferrari was kind of battling McLaren. They were kind of trading points, but there's a certain point where you're kind of like, okay, well, McLaren took over because McLaren was just getting the amount of points necessary where where Ferrari wasn't really able to make a dent into that lead. So that's where Mercedes is at this point. They have to start putting both guys on a podium consistently. They need Kimi to really be in the top 4 or 5 consistently, along with George, because that is pushing Ferrari out. If they don't do that, that means Ferrari, at least one of them, is in there. And that's not going to be enough for Mercedes to catch them.
Yeah, I really do hope that both teams take it seriously, the opportunity that they have in this final 10 races of this regulation set, because I do think they both have something to prove. Neither one of them have been consistently good for a number of years now, and it is a little bit frustrating. So, I'm excited to see it, and I hope we do get to see it instead of them continuously starting to talk more about 2026 than they do about 2025.
What's kind of fun for us, and at least for me, is that they're so unpredictable, and like on any given day or any given race, we don't know which team is going to do well and if the drivers are going to do well or not. So that makes for an exciting, just like final 10 races. It's frustrating for the teams themselves and for the drivers, but in terms of just like excitement and drama, it is fun.
So let's get into predictions, because I am very excited to get back to doing this. Who doesn't love predictions, where we look back in our review pods and laugh at how silly we were just a mere few days ago? That's what we got. That's what we're going to do. So we start with the podium predictions. We're also going to get into the constructors scrap. We just talked a little bit about a constructors battle. So we'll talk about who will get the most points and who will get the least points. Caveat there, can't choose who already has the most. So that's McLaren. Can't choose who already has the least, which is Alpine. Again, sorry, Ebony. And then we will get into our predicted Zoomy and Gloomy Boy. And then I will tell you when to watch everything, because that is a public service that I like to offer. So let's get into the podium predictions. Kyle says Lando winning, Oscar second, and Max third. So the Orange Army will be happy-ish from Kyle's prediction. Megan, who is not here, she says just about the same thing. Lando winning, Oscar second, but Charles Leclerc, little Ferrari Delulu. Every time she's on the podcast, we know the delusional Ferrari comes up. Third isn't too delusional, though, so I'll give it to her. There is a possibility. We will see. Donald, your podium prediction.
So I have Oscar winning, and I have Max finishing second after we just talked trash about him for 15 minutes. And then I have Lando in the third spot.
Okay. Deepti, what about you?
I've got Lando winning, Oscar second, and George in third.
We are committed to not forgetting about George in the second half of the season. I am also on board with not forgetting about George. I have Oscar winning, I have Lando second, and I have George third. We will see. So constructor scrap, again, predicting most points and least points. Kyle says Ferrari most points, least points. He has Haas. Megan has Ferrari, of course, could predict that. And then least, Oh, she's going full anti-Dutch. She's saying Red Bull, not Racing Bulls, y'all. She is saying Red Bull least points. Wow, that would be interesting to see. Deepti, your prediction for most points and least points.
I have Mercedes with the most points and Haas with the least.
Oh, a couple of y'all really not believing in Haas. It hurts my heart. Donald, most points, least points.
I have Ferrari with the most points, and I have Sauber with the least points. They won't get lapped, but
Well, they might get lapped, just not.
I'm
twice.
sorry, they won't get lapped twice. Let me rephrase. They won't get lapped twice.
Hey, listen, they have a podium, and Bortoletto's been quite good. I'm excited to actually see if they can continue their good results from like the last few races of the before the summer break. I've got Mercedes with the most points. I feel like I kind of agree with Deepti. I feel like they're more serious than Ferrari at the moment, and so I kind of have them having the most points, and we'll see what happens, especially because it's cooler temperatures and they tend to do okay in cooler temperatures. I guess cooler temperatures and their old suspension. So maybe we'll see if they put those two things together and actually look decent again. Least points, I say Racing Bulls. I think losing Laurent Mekies, even though he's still like within the Red Bull family, he's strictly focused on the Red Bull team now. And I think that is causing a little bit of turbulence, just with keeping that team running as smoothly as it was before when he was there. Not a lot. I just think it'll take a race or two to get it together, but I think it probably happened at a terrible time because he left, they put somebody else new in. I was not super new to the team, but new leadership, somebody else calling the shots, and then you have a break, and then you have to do it all over again, and so it's going to feel like you're restarting really from ground zero then, and so I think they're going to struggle just a little bit, maybe another race or two, and they'll be back to good results. Okay. Let's get to our Zoomy and Gloomy Boy predictions. Zoomy Boy is basically who's going to have a good weekend. Not who's going to win races or anything like that, just who's going to have a really, really nice relative to expectations weekend. And then Gloomy Boy, same thing, who's going to have a poor weekend. So Kyle is predicting his Zoomy Boy will be Isaac Hajar. So he said everything I just said about Racing Bulls is dumb. And then Gloomy Boy, he has Pierre Gasly. Oof. Him and Ebony just going at it with the Alpine hate. Megan, Zoomy Boy, she says, let me pick someone random. Esteban Ocon, it's your time to shine. So there you go. You're getting a little pep talk from Megan there. And then Gloomy Boy, she says, Max Verstappen, he's going to push too hard and crash. All right. Well, now we see why the Verstappens cut off her internet. Deepti, your Zoomy and Gloomy Boys.
I'll start with Gloomy Boy. I'm on board with Megan. I'm saying Max is going to be Gloomy Boy. He, like we've talked about, home race. He wants to win. I don't think he'll even podium, and that's going to be no good for Max. Zoomy, initially I was going to go with Hulk, but I want to go with Yuki to split the Red Bulls, and I think it'll be hilarious if Yuki finally does better than Max in the second car, and he's due for a good one. Like, it's been so long since he's even gotten points. I think the last time I got points was P10 and I forget which race even. So I'm going to hope for Yuki points.
Fair enough. I would like Yuki points. It would be a tremendous thing to finally see. Donald, your predicted Zoomy Boy and Gloomy Boy.
So my Zoomy Boy is Kimi Antonelli. I don't think he's going to do super well, like podium or anything like that, but he has had a terrible stretch. I just kind of briefly mentioned how bad a stretch he's had. Outside of the podium, he's basically been in the bottom 5 or had to retire the car the last 6 or 7 races. So I'm thinking he's going to get back into that middle tier of the top 10. My Gloomy Boy is Bortoletto, only because I think Sauber is maybe shook by the momentum that Cadillac has produced, and Audi kind of being, they introduced their, a few weeks ago, they introduced their full team name and things like that. And I don't think there's been a lot of pressure on them. And I think now it's going to start to finally show, maybe not bubble over, but I just don't think he's going to have a good week.
Well, I disagree. My Zoomy Boy is Gabriel Bortoletto, primarily because I feel like he was before people kind of took a step back and looked back at the first, IS half plus a couple races of the season, and we're like, whoa, Bortoletta's actually been quite good. And I think him getting that recognition is going to be a bit of a boost. I think he's been able to go into this break looking really good, even though it's wild. Nico Hülkenberg finally got on the podium, and you still look at their results, and Bortoletta's been out qualifying him. He's been, he's been faster than him. He's been pretty good, pretty solid in terms of the teammate battle between them. And so I'm really excited to see how he continues to develop. And I think he's got to be riding a high coming off that summer break where everybody was like looking at it and looking back at all the rookies and having to say, actually, he's been quite surprising. And also, side note, F you, Helmut Marko. My gloomy boy, Carlos Sainz. This is a rough one. I didn't really want to type it, but that Williams team is just weird. It was mentioned before with Alex Albon and how many times he had to DNF from a race. They have some issue with cooling on their car, and I don't know if it will actually come into play here, but I just think that Carlos Sainz has not had a good transition to Williams. It's been tough. It's been a struggle. Obviously, it's a car that's lesser than a Ferrari, but even though Ferrari's been struggling and not looking great, it's still taken Sainz a little bit of time to get used to. Meanwhile, Alex Albon, when he finishes a race, looks pretty decent. So I think Sainz has a lot to prove, and I don't know if this is the race where he's going to be able to prove it. Okay, those are our predictions. Let me tell you when to watch things. We have, and by the way, these times are Eastern because that's where I am. Free practice 1 is 6:25 a.m. on Friday. Wake up early. ESPN2, ESPN Deportes. If you do wake up early, congratulations. I won't be there. Free practice 2 is at 9:55 a.m. That is also ESPN2 and ESPN Deportes. I will definitely be there for that one. Free practice 3, even earlier. That is 5:25 a.m. You're really diehard if you're up for that one on a Saturday. ESPN2 and ESPN Deportes. What I like to do is actually when I get up is turn that on. Like that's the first thing I watch when I get up. But it might not be because qualifying is also Saturday and it is 8:55 a.m. So maybe just watch that. ESPN2, ESPN Deportes. And then the Grand Prix is Sunday at 8:55 a.m. on main ESPN channel, also ESPN Plus for some other, like, they're doing different, what do you call them?
Altcast?
Yeah, altcast. So there's like different onboards and like a mixed, I think you can watch multiple drivers at the same time on one of the channels. So they're doing an interesting thing there. I haven't checked it out yet because I usually watch F1 TV, but maybe I'll check it out. It's also on ESPN Deportes, by the way, the Grand Prix. They will be showing replays of the race on Sunday, 2 of them, one at 4 p.m. and one at 11 p.m. on ESPN News. And I'm going to do a little bit of a plug for our F1 Academy review because during the break, we reviewed F1 Academy series. It's on Netflix. We also reviewed the F1, the movie. So check those out. And those are really fun episodes as well. But if you want to follow F1 Academy this season, there will be F1 Academy races and qualifying. Although, again, if you're up for the qualifying, God bless you. 4:25 a.m. on Saturday is qualifying for F1 Academy. It's on ESPN Plus. The race 1, though, is at a watchable time, 11:05 a.m. on Saturday, also ESPN Plus. And then race 2, not quite a watchable time, 4:40 a.m. on Sunday, ESPN Plus. So maybe catch the replays of some of those. Certainly a replay of the second race on Sunday and check that out and follow some F1 Academy because it is pretty fun and a good project. So check out our review of that series too because it was a pretty good conversation. All right, Donald, Deepti, anything to add?
Let's get racing.
All right, and for Donald and Deepti, I'm Andre. Vroom vroom.
Vroom, vroom.